Welcome to the Hope Sports Podcast, where each week we have the privilege of hearing from an elite athlete about what made them fall in love with their sport, what parts of their journey were the most challenging, and how they find purpose and meaning in their lives outside of medal counts and competitions. This week, we not only have an amazing athlete, but just one of the most multi-talented individuals that I know of. You may know Matt Lindland as a UFC fighter, but like me, you may not know about the original sport he wanted to pursue, or how he owns multiple businesses, or that he once ran for a political office, or how it took a Supreme Court ruling to get him on the U.S. Olympic team. Seriously, y'all, I can't make this stuff up. You're in store for a fascinating episode as Matt shares his journey and how he kept pursuing dream after dream as they came his way. Thanks for joining me. Now let's dive on in. All right, Matt Lindland, thank you so much for joining us on the Hope Sports Podcast.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I'm excited.
Well, let's just get right to it. So for those that are listening that may not be as familiar with your background, can you tell us a little bit how you got started into sports?
Well, I got started into sports is because I was a rural boy. I lived in the country, and I grew up as an equestrian athlete. I thought I was going to
Really.
Yes, really. I thought I was going to compete in the Olympics in either eventing or show jumping or steeplechase or I just all I ever did from the time from my first memory, I was on a horse, and I was probably one of the best riders. I was one of the best riders in my state, and looking to go to the regionals and hoping to go to the nationals. And my parents informed me that we were poor people and that I needed to find a new sport. And so I discovered wrestling in high school, and it was very interesting because my our gym coach, he had wrestling in part of the curriculum as the gym class, and so of course they're like, "Oh man, you're great! You should come out for the team," So here I was, a 98-pound freshman in high school, going out for the wrestling team, and I just really fell in love with the sport. And after the season that year, one of our head coach handed us a flyer and was like, "Yeah, there's this freestyle and Roman Greco." And I asked my assistant coach if he knew anything about this Roman Greco thing, and he was like, "I do know that it's called Greco-Roman, and I could probably help you prepare for it, but that wasn't his expertise." And so I went to the tournament, and I don't know if many people have ever done this and gone 8-0 in one weekend, because I entered both the freestyle and both the Greco in junior and cadet age groups. So,
all in one week. How did you have the energy for that?
Well, some of the matches were pretty quick. I just got thrown on my back and pinned.
Wow.
So I went 0-8, and I realized that I needed to find a club that had some more elite training. Lo and behold, I show up at this club, and the coach at the club was the 1984 Olympic wrestling coach, and his name was Pavel Kotzen. He was a Russian immigrant, and I had amazing coaches at this club. Every one of my coaches, the head coach there, Mark Sprague, was an incredible mentor, still a mentor of mine to this day, and I owe him a call because I'm working with one of his athletes now. He's 75 and still coaching wrestling.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it took a lot of years to figure out how to do this sport and to get to the level that I wanted to. So coming out of high school, I wasn't a big recruit or anything. So I ended up going to a junior college, and I ended up winning a national title, and I did get recruited to a college finally, and I went to the University of Nebraska, and I had some success there. I was the number one ranked athlete in the country, and I was 36-0 going into the national tournament. I lost that first round, and so I was not an All-American. I wasn't even a placer that year.
Well, so okay. So you win the junior college nationals, then you go to a D1 school. You're 36-0. You're ranked number one, and you lose in the first round at the NCAAs. What? I mean, were you shocked? Were you how did you handle that? What was that like?
Well, it was a culmination of a lot of things. I think it was a long season. They didn't recover me well. They didn't rest me. They wanted me to cut to 158 pounds, and I was probably about 170-ish, Mm-hmm. And it was a long season, and didn't pick me at the right time. And that's, partially my fault, but I was a young athlete and still trying to figure this out and, change some things up, so after my eligibility, my wife and I and our son, we moved back to Oregon, which is where I'm from. And because she's from Oregon too, and she wanted to move back there. And I was wanting to stay in Lincoln and possibly finish up my degree at that time and keep wrestling at the college. But she was ready to move back to Oregon, and I was there for a year. I coached at 3 different clubs. I was trying to squeeze training in between, and I actually got invited to move to Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center. And we waited till my daughter was born, and then 2 weeks later we moved to Colorado Springs.
Wow. So how long had you been wrestling at that point when you got invited to Colorado Springs?
So I started in 85 and this was 94.
Okay, wow. So that's very cool. Now, okay, for your age, because you seem to start late. I mean, you started in high school. That seems was that kind of late?
I think it is pretty late for, a lot of guys, but in my experience, I think there's like a really good 10-year window, like, and you can be really good in high school or college, and then you're kind of done. And since I started late, it allowed me to continue on. And I didn't win my first medal till I was 30.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So what was training at the Olympic Training Center like? I mean, that's something people just dream of, what was that like?
Well, it was exciting. I was moving out to Colorado Springs and, I got out here, and at that time, things have changed here in Colorado Springs with the amount of athletes they actually will house. At that time, I think we had I think it was like 24, 26 of us, lots of training partners, lots of opportunities to travel internationally and compete all over the world and just, chase our dreams and do what we love to do. But it was an incredible opportunity, but it was also very difficult. And so after 3.5 years of doing that, my former coach at Nebraska, offered to hire me for a job. And I wasn't quite sure because I needed to have, I needed training. I needed to get to international tournaments. I needed training partners, and he offered to do all those things. And so I ended up moving to Lincoln, and my last 4 years of wrestling right up to the Olympics was that whole quad. I was training out of Nebraska. And at that time, getting to mentor other athletes.
Okay. Now this is awesome. So you are coaching, you're training, you have a wife, you have 2 children.
Yes.
And didn't you also start doing MMA stuff around this time?
I did. I
took How did you do all this stuff?
I took 3 fights in MMA in 1997, right after I moved to Nebraska. And I realized that was going to be a lot of fun, but it was going to be, pretty much the same kind of journey. And so I took those 3 fights all relatively close. I think 2 of them were on one night. The other one was like a month away. And I put that on hold because I knew that to reach my goals in wrestling and get on the podium, it was going to take a lot of sacrifice and a lot of discipline. And I couldn't really split my time between doing MMA. So I really put that on a hold. But the games were in October that year, and December I started fighting the UFC.
Wow. Okay, so the Olympics were the big goal, the big dream. Like, what was it like finally getting there and being in that environment? Like, take us through that.
Well, Laura, it was quite the process. I don't know how much research you did, but there was a court case for me to get on the Olympic team.
Oh wait, isn't this right? You got your nickname through this, didn't you?
I did.
So what was that all like? But that was part of qualifying for the team?
This show's only a half hour, 40 minutes. I don't know that long a time, but I'll give you the really short version. The Olympic trials were misjudged. They didn't apply the rules properly at the Olympic trials, and then they didn't allow me to protest. They said it was a judgment call, and I said it was a misapplication, and there was we were splitting hairs there. It's judgment, it's misapplication, and so they refused to give me due process at the Olympic trials. And so my only recourse was to go to the Greco-Roman Sports Committee and have my case heard in front of my peers. and the Greco-Roman Sports Committee there, they make a committee up, and then they started pulling members off of the committee that may have had bias. Well, that's why you have a committee, is because everybody has bias. And so you have multiple people, but you can't pull people off the committee that you think may vote one way or the other because they may have bias. So again, I was denied due process. I went to an arbitrator, and this was my like last chance. The arbitrator ordered the match be re-wrestled. I beat the opponent 9-0. At that time,
wow.
Now if you beat your opponent by 8, the match is over. But at that time it was 10. So it was pretty close to a technical superiority. And then the real fun happened. They didn't name me to the team.
Even after you beat him in the rematch?
Yeah, they did not name me to the team, and so we had to go to a federal judge, and they forced the United States Olympic Committee and USA Wrestling to put me on the team. And then once I got on the team, they allowed the case to be re-arbitrated. And that is the most odd thing, because arbitration is final and binding.
Right.
The case was re-arbitrated. So see, I'm telling you, this is a long story. It's crazy.
Oh, man.
At the end of the day, the case ultimately went to the United States Supreme Court, and they upheld the ruling of the federal judge. And I left for processing the same day I got the ruling, and we processed in San Diego that year.
So when was your trials? And then what was the timeline with all of these cases up until we left? Because it was in September. We left it was end of September when the Olympics started.
Yeah, and
so when were your trials?
Trials were in June.
Okay, wow. How did you keep your head straight during all of that?
It was difficult. It was very difficult, but I had a vision. I had goals, and I had faith, and a lot of prayers, and just staying strong. I mean, there was definitely moments where I wasn't sure, and I just kept training through the whole process.
Did you have support around her, or did you kind of feel all alone at that point?
Well, I felt pretty alone, but I have a wonderful wife that I've been married to for 27 years, and I have 2 children that love me, and I have some great coaches that supported me, but nobody could tell me, hey, you're going to get this spot. We just all kept praying and hoping that was the case, and I just kept training through this whole process. And then when I got to Australia, we went to a city a couple hours away in Canberra, and had our acclimation camp. And the day I walked in opening ceremonies, they were going to re-arbitrate the case in the International Court of Arbitration for Sport.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the day I was walking in opening ceremonies. So this thing was never going to end. And
oh my goodness!
Unfortunately, they woke a federal judge up in Chicago at 3 a.m. And they were calling from Australia, and he said, "You know what? You guys won. You beat me. Just know that if you plan on coming back to the United States, we'll have air marshals waiting to hold you in contempt. And so if you guys choose to do this, go ahead." But so they ended up not going forward with that last case, and I wrestled in the games and made it to the finals and got a silver medal that year.
Which is amazing. I mean, what is the experience like to be in the Olympics? You walked in the opening ceremonies, granted with this cloud hanging over you, but were you able to at least enjoy that and soak in that Olympic spirit, or what was that like? Take us through that.
No, it was, you know what? I had some great training partners. I had one of my best friends, dearest friend. He was an alternate. He did not make the team that year. He was a weight class below me. He was one of my training partners at every camp. And he left camp early, went to Sydney and got an apartment right next to the venue that had saunas and a place to recover and relax in between rounds and before the weigh-ins. And so, I just really kind of pulled myself away and just surrounded myself with loved ones and people that really cared about me and supported me. I didn't really get into the whole Olympic thing. My kids were pretty young. They were 4 and 6 at the time. And my wife was there, and they were staying there. And I just remember the one night that my daughter and my son and my wife, they came to visit me, And my daughter said, "Are you going to go home with us tonight, Dad?" And I was like, "Yeah." Yes. It's just like so excited. Like, I'm done with this
That's
wrestling
awesome.
thing, you know?
Yeah, it's they put things in real perspective,
You
don't
know,
they?
they do, and they help us keep things in perspective, you know, of what's really important. And that was really what was important to me. It wasn't the after parties. It wasn't the opening ceremonies in the village. And I mean, those things are great. And I met Muhammad Ali in the village. And I mean, there was a lot of
Oh, wow.
cool things that happened at the games, but ultimately it was just, being able to have that opportunity to compete and, try to pursue my highest goals for my career.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the next year you got a silver at the World Cup, and I think that's when you retired after that,
The
right?
next year was the World Championships.
World
Yeah,
Championships.
and I
Okay.
moved up a weight class because I was almost done. I started fighting right after the Olympics. The games were in early October, and I fought early December in the UFC in Japan that year. And I started fighting throughout that year, and the World Championships were going to be held in New York City in September of 2001. And so I had a great training camp, and I was getting ready to go to the World Championships. And somebody crashed some planes into the World Trading Center, and so
Mm.
they canceled the Worlds. They postponed it till December. So I had a new training camp and new preparation, and really enjoyable process, honestly. Even through what was going on in the world and everything, the fact that I was just having fun and enjoying it, because I really at that point didn't care if I made the team. I just wanted to go compete and have fun, and I didn't carry all that pressure of wanting to win. And I was able to put things in a better perspective. I was a little older. I'd already won a medal at the Olympics. I knew what I was capable of doing, but
Hmm.
I wasn't sure at that new weight class. I was moving up, from 76 kilos to 87 kilos. So it
Oh, wow.
was quite a jump.
Hmm. That's cool. That's cool. And so following that, you went kind of full time into UFC stuff, right? And that was kind of new at that time, wasn't it?
It was pretty new. It was not owned by the current owners at the time. And the current owners, the Fertitta brothers and Dana White, and those guys weren't involved back then. But after my first fight, they had purchased the company and started making some big changes. And, but a lot of the rules were just coming into place. My first fights there was like 3 rules: no biting, no eye gouging. And I think you couldn't attack somebody in the groin. I was like, I don't know.
And that's it. Those are the only
That was
rules, right?
it. And as things progressed, they started putting in more rules and made it more of a sport. And now it's a worldwide sport.
That's so it's so cool to be part of something at like its inception like that. I guess why did you decide to be done with wrestling and go into more of this mixed martial arts kind of
I wanted to
arena?
make a living
Mm.
being an athlete.
Oh, why would you want to do that? Come on.
There wasn't a lot of prize money in wrestling, and you know, I
Hmm.
and it's in the name, prize fighter. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go fight for a prize. And I had a different perspective on things. It was like, yeah, I wanted to be the best in the world, but I also wanted to make a living doing what I love to do, and
Hmm.
that allowed me to do that.
That's awesome. We don't have much of that opportunity in diving. Like now, a lot of people go into kind of Cirque du Soleil type stuff. That's kind of where diving, like after they're done with their Olympic runs or their college runs, they're all kind of going into the circus shows now or performances on back of cruise ships and things. It's
Okay,
kind of crazy. Yeah.
make a decent living, 6 figures.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not quite that much, I don't think, but they make a living.
Okay.
So yeah, I hear you. So now, I heard you also were a stuntman in some TV shows and films. Like, as an acrobat, like, I've always wanted to do that. I always thought that would be so awesome. Is it as cool as I think it is?
Honestly, yes, it is pretty cool.
Yes, I love hearing that.
I got to do some fight scenes. I had some opportunities to drive cars in New York City when they shut the streets down, and
Oh,
do
sweet.
some different things like that. On Leverage, I did this one show called the Tap Out Job, and it was great because they asked me to actually coordinate the fight scenes throughout.
Oh, cool.
It was a television show, that one, but I've done some film as well. And I brought a lot of guys from my gym. I was like, oh, we need backup guy. We need background people hitting bags in the gym. And we need some preliminary fights. So, I got to hire, a lot of people and coordinate some stuff, but that really was a lot of fun, but I never wanted to be famous. That was never a goal of mine. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed, the stunt work and being on camera and being on set, and that was fun. But it was never a goal of mine to be famous. So I just didn't continue to pursue that as much as I probably could have if that was really what I was driven to do. But I was still fighting at the time, so it was in between fights. It was just an opportunity to make some extra cash and do something fun and exciting.
Well, you've done a lot of fun and exciting things. I love how one thing keeps taking you to the next thing. And you also took a little dip into politics. I have to ask, was that fighting rougher than like being in the octagon?
Oh my gosh. Politics is so annoying. And, I ran as a conservative, and I'm barely a conservative. I'm lean way more conservative than I do liberal, but I'm like this, like almost anarchist libertarian. I'm like that far right. Like I'm farther right than most conservatives, but in a more freedom kind of way. So it was interesting. I won a primary, a very heated primary. And the thing was, they didn't have anybody running for my seat in my district. And I was running for a state house seat. And so the last day of filing, I put my name on the computer, and I started getting all these calls like, why are you doing this? Who are you? What are you doing? I was like, well, I'm going to represent my community and my people. And, we got.
So was this not really like thought through? Like you just kind of on a whim, nobody's running, I should run? Or had you thought about this?
It was, my strength coach and I we talked about it for months. Like, I wonder if anybody's going to fill that seat, and then like that morning after a workout, I went home, got on my computer and registered to run for the seat. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we've got somebody. I said, well, that's great. If you got somebody, let me vet them out, and I'll support them if I can get on board. But, I wasn't into, I don't know how to put this any other way, but, the opponent that was running against me was really pro-abortion. And that was kind of one of my big issues was I'm pro-life. I'm very pro-life. So that's just that was a hard thing for me to get over. I said, I can't support this individual, and I'm going to have to try to run against her. So I did that. And then I lost the general election on a 2-point margin.
Wow.
Yeah. I dipped my whatever into the politics a little bit.
Well, I love that you stand up for what you believe in, and you are not afraid of a fight, whether it's in the ring or in the office. That's awesome. I love it.
You left out my probably my most favorite sport that I took up after this.
Oh no! What? What?
I raced professionally whitewater.
Whitewater. Okay, how did that happen?
Okay, this is a great story because I have a gym in Portland. I have a martial arts school in Portland, and it's also a fitness center. And this team of whitewater racers asked me if I would donate some space for them to train in the off season while they couldn't do whitewater training, if they could get in my gym and do strength and conditioning. And so I gave them some space and some time. We have a pretty big martial arts studio. We have like 2 different mat rooms. Like we can have a kickboxing class going on in one room and a jiu-jitsu or a grappling class in the other. And then I have a fitness area. And our fitness classes run 4, 5, and 6. And so our martial arts classes go till like 9 o'clock at night. So I gave the RAF team my space and said, yeah, come on in. We're still training and nobody's in the fitness area. You guys can use that. And then they invited me to go watch a race. And then they convinced me to get in the boat with them that day. And
Of course. I'm guessing you were not hard to convince at that.
no. I was like, oh yeah, class 5 whitewater, sure, let's go. And then the next weekend I started racing with that team, and I won 7 regional titles, which is the Western region, which is like basically the entire West Coast, Washington, California, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, like that whole area where there is water.
And so wait, how long had you been doing it when you started winning all these titles?
I got on a really good team, and we just started winning, but we never won the nationals. We were second one year and third twice.
Man, so is this why you were coaching full time? So you weren't still also competing and fighting, or were you still
fighting MMA?
Of course you were,
and
of course you were.
And I was coaching, and I had a ranch with 16 horses, and
wow. And I'm starting to think your wife must be pretty incredible too, to like hold down the fort and the kids and everything else, I'm sure.
My wife is amazing. She surprises me every day, with her kindness and her generosity and her love. And she we were just out in Oregon for the holidays. We live in Colorado Springs now, because I'm the national coach for the Greco-Roman Olympic team. And my kids, they still live in Oregon. They're 24 and 26 now. We went back there to visit our kids, and my wife's father's dying, and he's just not a nice person at all, and never was a great father, but she is like an amazing daughter. Like, she was just out there every other day. We were driving 2 hours to the coast, and she was taking care of his affairs and his nurses and his hospice and his bills, and just being patient and kind and loving. And she just impressed me more and more every day. So yeah, she is a wonderful person, and you need that kind of support when whatever you're doing in life. I mean, whatever you want to achieve in life, you need somebody that's a partner with you and can help you navigate the rough waters.
Definitely. And now, like you mentioned, you are now the head Team USA wrestling coach since like 2014, right?
Yes, I took the job in 2014, right before the World Championships. And now I served in one Olympics in Rio, and that was a lot of fun, but we didn't come back with any medals that year. And last year we got a silver medal at the World Championships, and we've got 2 other bronze medals from one individual, and now it's a lot of team building. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of young men that they're not loved. They don't trust people. They don't, because I think there's just a huge father crisis. I just think there's a lot of dads that have abandoned these young men, and they're like tough guys, but they're really not tough. They're tough men on the mats, but in life they just have a lot of difficulties because they don't trust people. They don't know how to be loved because they've never been loved necessarily, and they don't know how to, it's hard. It's hard working with some of these young guys nowadays, because there's a lot of guys that just come from these broken families, and they all seem to end up in the sport of wrestling or MMA.
Right. Well, I guess it's a good outlet that way, at least. But I mean, do you find yourself when you're coaching, is it more than technique and stuff that you're having to work on their hearts and their minds more?
That's exactly what, and that was part of the reason I wanted to take our guys down to Mexico to build homes with the Hope Sports. And I just wanted them to understand that they're more than just an athlete. They're people that have value. They're, God loves them. But it's tough to share that message, all the time with guys. You just got to do it by example and by showing them that you care about them. But yeah, we work on a lot of character strength stuff. We have a lot of different times where, we're meeting about this camp that's coming up. I mean, we identified 5 areas that my athletes identified. I put them in a room and I sat them down and I put them into small groups and I said, come back. There's got to be there's got to be some things that we can get better as a team. And I'm not talking about wrestling. I'm not talking about conditioning or skills or techniques. I'm talking about what do we need to get better as a team. And our athletes did a really good job identifying the 5 areas. And one of them was, first of all, was communication. And then it was trust and respect. It was sense of urgency, professionalism, and image. Because they know that they're not always doing the right things, so we talk about these things, but it's like we've got to live these things. We've got to day in, day out. And so we're working on some things this camp that's coming up. Every day has got a different theme. One day is communication. We're going to have morning briefings. We're going to have evening meetings. And in the middle of the day, we're going to train wrestling.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I guess you're working with the coaches too on hitting kind of those things as well. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Well, and I love on your website, as I was stalking you for this podcast, because that's one of my favorite things to do with really cool people. You had this really cool blog post titled A Coach's Prayer. And I love your heart to serve and to raise up your athletes and your kids, I imagine. It's just awesome. And so since we're on this podcast, we strive to get to kind of the heart of purpose in people's lives, either through or beyond their performance. And I'd love you to address that specifically for us. Like, how do you help the athletes that you coach or the coaches that you coach even, like, know that their identity is not just wrapped up in their results at the end of the competition? Like, how do you help them find that purpose beyond their performance?
Well, I think a lot of those, every year since I've been the coach, we go out to Oregon for our base camp. After the team is made, I'll get the guys recovering for a week and resting up. And then we kind of say, like, we're going to jumpstart things with the conditioning. So I tell them we're going to go out and do a lot of strength and conditioning. We're not going to do a lot of mat work. We're going to stay off the mat. But during those times, we go, I take them whitewater rafting. I take them out in nature. We do hikes. I mean, I just think it's so important to get out and see what God created and just being because most of my athletes are urban men. They come from, Chicago and New York and, bigger cities. And so it's a really unique experience to get them out there. I just had Ellis Coleman, one of my athletes, and his wife over for dinner, and his young daughter. She's 3, and I mean, I think it's just those type of things, building the relationships with your athletes, one-on-one, small groups, small teams. But I mean, as a national team coach, I mean, I've got 30 guys that are on national teams, so it's hard to have those one-on-ones when you have those camps. So Ellis lives in town, and I just invited him over a couple weeks ago. I was like, hey, what day do you guys want to come over for dinner? He's like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. Great. And so it's stuff like that. I mean, I bought some lawn furniture that came from Amazon. I had to put it together. It's like IKEA. Have you ever put together stuff from?
Oh, yes. Okay, like everything in our house.
This is basically like IKEA lawn furniture. And I asked one of my guys, hey, will you come over? And, I'm handing him the little screws, and he's putting them in, and we're just having conversations. It's finding those times just where it's not scheduled, it's not planned. It's just, help me put my furniture together. Come over for dinner. Let's go for a hike. It's those things. And I did take a small group down to Mexico, and that was great. And they got to see me interact with my daughter and her boyfriend. And every year when we go to camp in Oregon, my daughter comes over and she brings the board games, and we have a board game night with the team. And those things are really important. I think they go a long ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you mentioned the Hope Sports Build a couple of times. If you guys aren't familiar with that, Hope Sports is a great organization. They bring down athletes to build homes for the poor in Mexico. And it's really cool because you do this amazing thing for this family who, has nothing, and it's just going to really completely change their lives, their children's lives, everything. But it impacts the athletes so much, and a different type of relationship is built, a different outlook on life is built. And it's just huge. And I love that you took your whole team out there, because that's an amazing way to bond as a team going through such a life-changing experience together like that.
Yeah. And, I love whitewater rafting, and I don't take these guys down what I go down, but I'll get them out on a class 3 run, and we'll splash and giggle and have fun. And, so, I mean, but these guys, like I said, these guys, most of them are scared of stuff like that. They're fearful, they're frightened. And, going through life scared would have to be difficult. It would have to be really hard. I don't know why there's so much fear in young men these days. But I try to fix that somehow, by creating these different opportunities to where they have to face their fears. Every time you challenge yourself, you get stronger and you get less fearful of whatever it is. I think all those things carry over in life.
I think you just hit the nail on the head. And I think to face a fear that's outside of maybe your sport or what you're doing all the time is a great way to begin to learn how to do that. Because I've met so many people who try to put their fears off and like pretend they don't exist and push them away. But then it's almost like it gets bigger, But when you face it and you deal with it and you begin to confront it, it loses its power, right? And so I think what you do is brilliant, like getting them kind of over that and maybe something outside of their normal realm so they learn that they can face these things and they can overcome these things. Because you can't be brave unless you're first afraid, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we're not fearless. We're terrified people, but we choose to be brave and like confront that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and we've climbed a couple 14ers here in Colorado. For the listeners, that's a 14,000 foot mountain, and I think there's like 50 of them, and we've done a couple real easy ones. But I've had these guys talk about, like I started the character development, leadership and character development show on YouTube. So I'm doing a podcast as well.
Awesome.
And it's on my Coach Matt Lindland YouTube channel. But, and that was really, I did that because one of the guys said, Coach, you never give us any leadership training. I was like, okay, let's see. I sent you out to the Marines for their leadership training course. You and I walked to the top of a 14,000 foot mountain together with me leading the way the whole way. Let's see. And I just kept going through these things. But you know what? I'll do more stuff for you to help you with leadership. And that's what we're going to tackle in this next week coming up in our camp, is we're going to talk about some different ways to become a leader. And I think those 5 areas that our athletes identified are 5 areas that we could really hone in on and develop leadership through those areas.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Be great. Well, where can we follow you online to kind of continue to be inspired and encouraged and led by you, because you're just awesome?
M Lindland at just M Lindland, my first initial last name on Instagram. That's probably the one that I can deal with the most.
Nice.
But I think the best thing would probably be Coach Matt Lindland YouTube channel. That's where I'm doing the leadership show. I'm putting up some clips.
Well, awesome. We'll make sure to link all those things in the show notes so people can find you there. But I do have to ask you one thing before we go. You've tried so many different things. Have you ever jumped off a 10-meter platform?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, good. So we can do synchro now, right?
I did. Okay, so I did it. I did a gainer off it.
Oh, you did. See, I love it. Not only do you jump, you do a gainer off of it. This is awesome.
Then I did a full gainer where I landed with my feet. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to do a 1.5.
Oh no!
And I landed on my side and lost like all my Puerto Rico at the Olympic Training Center in Puerto Rico. You ever trained at that one?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, it was. I barely got to the side of the pool because I couldn't breathe. I knocked all the wind out of myself. But yeah, and then in Lincoln, when my first year as a coach, it was so funny. I'll tell you the story and then we'll go. So there's the platform up there in Lincoln in their pool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got one of those folding mats that, like the gymnasts use, and they fold.
Oh no. Did you set up a slip and slide?
You know what I did.
Of course. Off 10 meter?
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice. So what did you just dive or did you flip?
Oh yeah, we did everything. We got, you can get about halfway
did.
across the pool in the slip and slide off that 10 meter. And the security guard pulls me in the next day. He goes, Matt, we need to talk. He pulls me in his office. He shows me the video. He goes, my eyes only. Don't worry.
Oh my gosh. That's good. Okay. Next time I come up to Colorado Springs, I'm calling you and we are going diving together, or you're taking me whitewater rafting, or we're climbing a mountain or something.
Gorge. Let me know.
Okay.
I would love to take you down the Royal Gorge. I got a boat here. I got I got a raft. I got a couple kayaks, and
I'm not going to lie. I would probably be scared, but I think it would be awesome.
it is scary, but you can do it. It's the most rafted section in America.
Okay.
Everybody does it, but not everybody does it in my style.
Well, I'm sure that would be exciting. So I will take you up on that. Hopefully one day soon. That's really cool. Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming on, for sharing all your wisdom, your heart with us, your stories. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Isn't he just incredible? I mean, aside from all the things that I learned about his career, I think it's just amazing how, through all of it, he remains unwaveringly committed to the character and leadership development of his team. To be so accomplished, yet to still have the humility to find his worth in his integrity, it's just amazing. So many thanks to Matt for joining us today, and I hope that you get a chance to check out his YouTube channel, Coach Matt Lindland. Matt is doing amazing things in the leadership development of athletes, and he just has so much wisdom about how we not only grow as competitors, but as people. Looking to improve their athletic performance with purpose? I'm offering a free live masterclass where I'll teach you how to improve your athletic performance without spending more hours in the gym. If you're ready for change and you want to take your performance to the next level, then I want you to go and sign up at laurawilkinson.com/masterclass. That's laurawilkinson.com/masterclass to sign up for my free live masterclass on improving your athletic performance. I'll see you there. Be sure to join us next week as we have Olympic sprinter and bobsledder Lauren Williams joining us. On behalf of Hope Sports, I'm Laura Wilkinson. Thanks again for tuning in and have a great week. This podcast is produced by Evo Terra and Simpler Media. For more information on Hope Sports and to access the complete archives, please visit hopesports.org.